I'm Rabbi Jay Karzen.
And I'm Rabbi Ray Karzen.
And Tape with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're gonna watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug. Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. I'm honored to have with me once again Rabbi Jay Karzen of Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
Rabbi Karzen was with us last year around Israel Independence Day when he was in the United States, and it's a pleasure to have him back with us. He is my rabbi, and I grew up learning so much from him, and it's just a great honor to have you on the show again. Now that you're back in Chicago, are you here for pleasure? Is this a mixed trip? What's the reason that you came back to Chicago?
I always come. I tried to come only for pleasure. I wrote a book. In the last years, I've been working on an anthology of all the funny anecdotes and tidbits and episodes that happened to me, specifically in the last years at the Wall, at the Kotel, where I officiated bar mitzvah services, and I call the wall appropriately Off the Wall. The book is called Off the Wall, and it's now available in Chicago. I came to publicize the book, to market the book, to sell the book, to promote the book.
And besides that fact, you told us a little bit that you were writing something when you were here last time. This is the book that you were writing,
yes.
And now it's published. And you publish this on your own. This is something you're doing. And I'm sure you're not, I know that publishing a book on your own when you don't have a publisher giving you money up front is really something for the self-satisfaction of doing it. You don't expect to make $1 million on it or anything like that. But you want to break even and just do it for the fun of it.
I sell 1,000 books, I break even.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, I've been telling these stories and share. We have to have a sense of humor. God blessed me with a sense of humor. And the truth of the matter is, so many people are depressed these days. So many people have a sense of despair and seldom smile. And I felt as a rabbi, my mitzvah would be to write something to enable people to smile, at least to chuckle a little bit and put some joy into their daily life by reading the book. It's funny. I think
Very nice. You're doing bar mitzvahs, a few weddings in Israel. People call you up and say, Rabbi, I want to have a simcha in Israel. I want to have a bar mitzvah. I want to have a bat mitzvah. How do you decide, for example, where to have it? You know, you don't have your own synagogue in Israel and say, come to my synagogue. We have Torahs in the Ark in the synagogue. What do you do?
When I moved to Israel exactly 13 years ago, I celebrated my bar mitzvah this past Hanukkah, and I decided that one of the contributions I could make to Israel's society was to perfect the art of simcha. People came, like you said, to have a simcha, and sometimes it's what we call in Hebrew a balagan. It becomes a very disorderly mess. It's a kind of situation that becomes a disaster. And my job is to make it very, very special, meaningful, to upgrade the whole level of the Simcha celebration in Israel. Bar mitzvahs are usually held at the Wall. For those people who want something more private, more picturesque, a second choice would be the southern wall steps around the corner of the Kotel. Some people prefer Masada. Some people prefer the Churva, the ancient Churva that was destroyed in 1948, but still today a very special place. Some people want the Tayelet, the promenade. I have all kinds of options for people who want something different, unique, something unlike any other bar mitzvah celebration.
Well, let's say, give me, of course, another place people must ask for Masada.
Yes, I mentioned Masada. I go to Masada. I'm there every month.
Really? Tell me something. Now, this is something that's hard for me to understand. If somebody wants to have a bar mitzvah on the steps of Daley Plaza in Chicago, you got to get all these permits. You got to take care of it all in advance. Somebody calls you up and says, Rabbi Karzen, we're coming to Israel. We want to have a bar mitzvah at the Wall. Be sure to reserve us a place. How do you reserve a place at the Western Wall at the Kotel?
Well, I do. As a matter of fact, I guarantee my people the best location at the Wall, and I have a way of getting the best location. Someone just wrote me an email the other day, wanted to know they're going to have a big bar mitzvah. They want to reserve the entire Kotel. They want to reserve literally the entire Kotel. Nobody else should be there that day. These are obviously impossible situations to satisfy, but I do get the best location for my people. You get there early, sometimes all night, being there, stake out the Kotel, and whoever gets there first gets the best location.
So what about a Torah? Do you have your own Torah you bring?
At the Wall, you don't need to bring your own Torah because there are plenty of Sifrei Torah. But for the southern wall steps, the Sada, the Churva, the Tayelet, the Promenade, I have my own personal Torah, my own ark, my own table, all my equipment which I bring and furnish to the family.
Very interesting. And when families come and they realize that this is, well, you must obviously have to tell them beforehand that Israel is an Orthodox society. If you come to the kotel, the men and the women can't all be standing up against the wall together, hugging each other during the service or something. How do you work that out?
The truth of the matter is that most of my clients are not Orthodox.
Right.
They are non-Orthodox. And those who want the kotel, I get them right up close to the mechitza, right alongside of the mechitza. I call mine the Karzen Kotel Corner. KKK, Karzen Kotel Corner.
Not the KKK that other people might
No, this is the holy Kotel Corner. And the women are literally sitting or standing as close to us at the service as we are sitting today, close to one another. With a fence in between, but we're very close, and everyone can see and hear and feel a part of the service. They're not spectators looking on, but an active participants in the service.
Do you attract spectators at services like that? People come, tourists are coming and they see all of a sudden a bar mitzvah, they see all these Americans in Israel.
Absolutely. CNN did a whole special on me, and in fact, when you come on El Al planes to Israel, they show you a little bit of a travelogue as you're landing, and they show me at the kotel doing a bar mitzvah, the sights and sounds of Israel, which is a travelogue promoting Israeli tourism, features me at the kotel doing a bar mitzvah. And people from all over the world, all different kinds of BBC and other international television companies have come to photograph and to film excerpts from bar mitzvahs that I do.
How many bar mitzvahs in Israel have you officiated at, approximately?
We're talking the thousands.
Thousands in 13 years.
Yes.
Amazing.
Well over, close to 2,000.
And if we go back to your years in Des Plaines or your years in Iowa as a pulpit rabbi,
thousands, many thousands.
We go to many thousands.
Many thousands. But each one to me is like it's the first. I don't say you're number 3,000 or 4,000. Every bar mitzvah, every bat mitzvah to me is exciting and fresh and new, and it's to me as if it were the very first. The same excitement I feel with each youngster as if it were the first one I'm doing.
Very nice, very nice. Tell me a little bit about the book. This is the book right here, Off the Wall by Rabbi Jay Karzen. And it's available, as we said, in Chicago Jewish bookstores you mentioned, and they can email you, of course, if they want to email us. We'll be happy to give them your information. But what is in this book? You know, you say it's funny and stuff. Every bar mitzvah can't be necessarily funny. Where do these stories come from?
Well, they're all true stories. One, for example, one of the first experiences, somebody wanted to know their printing invitation. They want the address of the Western Wall, the kotel. And I said, you just put the Western Wall? No, he said, everything has to have an address. So I called the Ministry of Tourism, I called the tourism bureau, I don't know if there was indeed an address, they laughed, I could hear them chuckling. And finally, when I said to the family, there is no address, and they said, there must be an address, I made up one. One Kotel Plaza, and that's the way the invitation read, and I told people to file that in their record book in case you ever asked. The address of the kotel, the Western Wall, it's one Kotel Plaza. That story is in
How do you say that in Hebrew?
These are English invitations. I have people who want, for example, to know if I give a discount for abbreviated services. People want to know if we can have a non-religious bar mitzvah. That's an oxymoron. They want to know if they can decorate the mechitza, the fence, with blooms and flowers. If they can have different colored tefillin, because black is so somber, the blue would be more appropriate to match their clothes. Someone knows they can only have tefillin for their hand and not the head.
Does it ruin their hair?
It'll ruin the hairdo for the, mess up their hair for the picture, the video. All kinds of interesting things that happen. And then there's stories about weddings and funerals. Over the years, this is a book that spans over 40 years of funny things. And as I said, God gave me a sense of humor, and I can see in the most absurd something funny. Not to laugh, God forbid, at people. I don't mean to poke fun at anyone. Somebody said this, a bitter gelächter, a Yiddish expression that means it would be funny if it weren't so sad. But some of these are really funny, and you have to have a sense of humor and laugh with.
What coming back to your times in the United States, what probably would you say are some of the funniest episodes that you experienced in your pulpit and displays at Maine Township or in Iowa?
I was a rabbi for 22 years at Maine Township Jewish congregation, and there are many funny things that happened, and they're all fond memories. The one that somehow sticks out of my mind of all is the story of our usher, chief usher, used to stand in the lobby of the congregation, and when latecomers, especially family and friends of bar mitzvah celebrants who came and were not familiar with the synagogue ritual and with the services, he would hand them the prayer books, the siddur, and tell them the page that we're on. So once the usher stood at the gate, a man came and he handed them a siddur that says $3.35, and the man takes out a $5 bill and says, "Do you have change?" You know, this is one of the stories that sticks out of my mind. And people who once had tried to tape record the service, even though Sabbath observance, of course, forbids that, the synagogue forbid it. And this person figured out that they would come anyways and hide the tape recorder in the siddur. And a shlemazel, which is the expression for someone who is really, has no mazel, sitting next to the wrong person, sat next to my wife. And that's a real shlemazel, sitting next to the Rebbitzin and trying to desecrate Shabbat in the synagogue. All these kind of funny things that have happened. People would call it, want to know what time this bar mitzvah boy goes on, not what time the services start, but what time the bar mitzvah goes on, and so forth. And many, many funny things like that. I don't want to tell it to you.
No, we want people to read the book, hopefully. So, besides your bar mitzvah, you can't do that 24 hours a day. Obviously, you might have 1 or 2 bar mitzvahs a week. Sometimes in the tourist season, you probably maybe have 8 or 9 bar mitzvahs a week if it's a good week. What do you do in Israel besides that?
I study.
You study.
I
That's
study.
a good thing to do.
Daf Yomi, the top page of Talmud of the day. I teach Bible classes every Saturday afternoon or Shabbat afternoon.
For women? Is that for
women's groups?
You mentioned that last time you were here.
Emunah women is one example. 2 or 3 sisterhoods. I alternate once a month with different sisterhoods as well. And I volunteer. I get no money for this. This is a complete volunteer job. I run the cemetery and bereavement program of the AACI, the Association of Americans, Canadians in Israel. We have our own cemetery in Israel, and I sell the graves, arrange funerals, burials from people in Israel and from people abroad who wish to be buried.
You know, people have asked me about this before. How do you arrange a funeral in Israel in advance, pre-arrange and so on and so forth?
As a volunteer, I get no commission, no salary.
Could people email you and ask you information about that?
They call me long distance, and we do it through the mails. And dozens, and you'd be surprised how many dozens of families in America, Chicago included, of course, buy graves, and they should live to be 120, but eventually they will be buried.
I think our viewers might wonder, why would people want, when they can't visit the grave on a regular basis, why would they want to bury their people, their relatives, their loved ones in Israel? And maybe you could speak a little bit about the Messianic era and the reason that people
Well, firstly, you should know that many families that do this already have their children and grandchildren in Israel. They live in America, but their children and grandchildren, their future, are here. And this is a way to guarantee, perhaps, that someone will visit them eventually when they pass away. But the truth of the matter is, I always tell people that Israel needs live bodies, not dead bodies. Even though it's a mitzvah to be buried in Israel, it's a bigger mitzvah to live in Israel. And we always encourage aliyah when people are still alive, rather than buy underground condominiums, as we sometimes refer to them, and have to wait until they pass away. We would rather have live families come, be productive.
Well, the idea that in the Messianic era, that the revival of the dead, according to Jewish tradition, the souls will come back to life. And
there's a lot of mystic interpretation. When the Messiah comes, there will be the resurrection.
So they'll be there already.
They'll be there already. Yes. These are mystical kinds of things which not everyone can accept literally.
Hard to accept it.
Literally, but nevertheless, Israel is a part of the Jewish soul, the psyche. The soul of the Jewish people is in Israel. Someone once said you may be born literally and physically in the diaspora, but your neshama, your soul, is born in Israel. And if you can't live there, when a person dies even in America and is buried in America, we always bury a little bit of Israel with them. If he can't come to Israel, Israel comes to him. A little bit of the earth from Israel is always placed in the casket with someone here in America to show that connection. The Jew and Israel are inseparable.
Really, you know, on the high holidays, I told a story in a sermon, and maybe you're familiar with the story, about a man who wasn't religious, and the rabbi always taught, he was friends with his rabbi, but he wasn't a religious man. He was sort of anti-religious in some ways, but his mother was buried in Israel, and he went to see, he was very old and very sick, and he wanted to be buried by his mother, and this was in the Mount of Olives. And when he went to Israel on a trip to try and arrange to buy a plot in the Mount of Olives, and found out that the whole section where his mother is buried is sold out. And there was no way that he could find a burial plot next to her. So in Israel, you contact the Jewish Burial Society there, and he contacted them, and they told him there was no way. But then he got a call right before he was leaving Israel, and he said, you know what? There's a man who wants to marry off his children, and he's very poor. He owns a plot in the section where his mother's buried. Maybe he'll sell the plot because he's collecting tzedakah. He's collecting charity to try and get the money together, to pay for his daughter's wedding. So sure enough, the man agrees. He does want to sell the plot. He needs the money so badly. So this man goes to meet with the other man to buy the plot from him, and with the Jewish Burial Society. And all of a sudden, the Jewish Burial Society places a piece of paper for him and says, I guarantee that I am an observant Jew and observe all the laws and rituals in Judaism. And the man was flabbergasted because he said, I didn't know you had to be religious to be buried on the Mount of Olives. So he said, I have to be buried by my mother. I'm going to sign the paper, but first I want to go see where the plot is, how far away. And sure enough, they get to the Mount of Olives, and they show him the plot, and it's a plot right next to his mother. When I read that story and shared it with the guy, I got chills in myself. Places, stories like that are so
to be buried in
spiritual.
Israel, I don't want anyone to think that you only can be buried in Israel if you're observant.
Right.
Many people are not
Mount of Olives.
in certain sections of the Mount of Olives,
Right.
in certain sections. The truth of the matter is, we talk about, someone said to me the other day, Israel was only 50 years old. The birth of Israel was only 50 years old, 51 years old. And I always think that Israel really was born 2,000 years ago at least. Right after the destruction of the temple, the Jewish people,
The year 70
in the year 70, they come when Rome destroyed Israel, we start making pledges, and we start breaking a glass under the chuppah. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, we say at the Seder, at Passover, and on Yom Kippur, we pray for Israel in the grace after meals, Birkat HaMazon, and the daily prayers. We do all kinds of things. We face east when we pray. These are the ways that the Jew never forgot Eretz Yisrael. Israel is a part of the Jewish people. We are inseparable. And though you may live in the diaspora, part of you is in Israel. And you have to remember that Israel and the Jewish people are inseparable. We're a dynamic duo.
Absolutely. The true story about this man who found the plot next to his mother, he became religious right away. He wanted to be buried there. He started putting on tefillin every day, strictly kosher, signed this piece of paper.
The only problem I have with that story is that it says that the implication is, had it not been for that situation, he wouldn't
might not
be
have
religious.
One
One should not be religious necessarily only because he wants to be buried someplace, but because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And I always say, I say this, that when a person says, I'm not religious, I always say, add the word yet.
Yet.
You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And here's a case where this little situation caused them to become religious. But the ideal situation is to become religious because you have come to the realization that it's the right thing to do.
Right.
It enhances your life and elevates your life to a higher level.
Are there areas in Israel, now you say you speak to all these different groups and stuff, are there areas in Israel where Americans actually are running the cemeteries, where people from America are buried?
This section in the ACI cemetery, the Americans and Canadians in Israel, is a part of the Eretz HaChaim cemetery located near Beit Shemesh, which is outside of Jerusalem, 20 minutes outside of Jerusalem. And we, the Americans and the Canadians, we run that section in cooperation with the Chevra Kadisha of the Eretz HaChaim cemetery.
Very interesting. You spoke about your speaking to groups. You spoke about your interaction with other situations. When you went to Israel, you spoke Hebrew like an American. I presume that I presume now that streetwise talk and newspaper phrasing and stuff like that is much more familiar. And you've lived there for 13 years. You speak a fluent Hebrew like an Israeli would who was born there.
I speak Hebrew, but not like an Israeli.
Well, not with the accent.
I have the accent of an American. I'll never get rid of that.
What? When you come in to speak you speak to Israeli groups now, I presume.
Yes,
you come in to speak to them. Do they say to you?
I always start out by saying, you'll understand
me. You don't
me.
sound like you're speaking our language.
I make a joke about that. I said, I hope you'll be able to understand me. I understand you. When you talk, you can understand me. And if you don't, we'll explain one to the other. We make jokes about it, but they understand. They help me. Some of them are very sympathetic. They hear it. Sometimes I have a difficulty in making one particular point, and they'll help me out. And it's a lot of fun. And I help them in English. They help me in Hebrew.
Cooperative.
My children, of course, and grandchildren are very, very fluent in Israel and in Hebrew. And my grandchildren, of course, are born in Israel, so they're all Sabras, and they speak more fluently in Hebrew than English.
Do your grandchildren, I know some of your grandchildren, I know they do, but do most of your grandchildren have that Israeli accent to their voices when they speak English?
They all have an accent. They sound like Puerto Ricans. They do speak. I say that lovingly, of course. It wasn't meant to be a slur against Puerto Rico, but they just have an accent.
And we know some wonderful Puerto Rican Jews.
Absolutely. I had bar mitzvahs from Puerto Rico, as a matter of fact.
Really?
This year, one family from Puerto Rico could come. So.
A year ago, December, I visited Puerto Rico and went through the Jewish community there, and I was amazed to find that in the old section of San Juan, Puerto Rico, that the you know, the ancient homes and apartments and so on are actually occupied by so many Jews as vacation homes. It's an amazing thing to find in Puerto Rico, and there's a thriving Jewish community center.
Jews are all over the world. Yeah, Jews are all over the world. It's an incredible thing. I had Jews from Germany come for bar mitzvah this year, from Nuremberg, outside of Nuremberg. And literally, I'm amazed sometimes when I get letters from places where I never suspected there would be Jewish people living. But they're there. They're there.
Tell me, we find here in the Chicago area so many, and I've had so many on my show, survivors, Holocaust survivors, and so on and so forth. In Israel, obviously, Holocaust survivors now are on the elderly side. You know, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. In Israel, do people make it obvious that they're survivors? Because it's kind of obvious because either one of two things. Either their only connection to Judaism is that they're survivors in some cases. Some of them have moved away from Judaism because they can't believe in anything because of what they went through in their lives through the Holocaust.
Yes.
And
we have that
so
too.
on.
We have that too. Let me say that Yom HaShoah, which is the official Holocaust Memorial Day on the 27th of Nisan, the week after Passover, is a very big thing in Israel. I mean, it's observed all over the world. It's observed in the Chicago area too, obviously. But in Israel, it's something extra special. At night, for example, on the eve of Yom HaShoah, everything is closed. All the theaters, the restaurants, places of entertainment, Ben Yehuda Street, you know, all of the places where people are all closed. Everything is closed. There's a siren in the morning at 11 o'clock, I believe, that is sounded for 2 minutes, and the entire country comes to a halt. Buses stop, cars stop, everyone gets out and stands in silence. It's a heart-rending kind of experience. You can hear about it, people talk about it, it's written in the paper, I know that CNN has covered it, but unless you have been a part of it and have been in it, and to see how it affects you personally and emotionally, it's a very powerful thing. So everyone in Israel is aware of Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust. It's studied, it's part of the curriculum of the public school system. And
survivors speak there like they do here?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very interesting. Yes. Let's go to another day that's so moving, and that's Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which is the anniversary of the destruction of the first temple and 587 BCE, and the second temple in the year 70 of the Common Era. Is there somebody who would go to a synagogue here and hear the Lamentations read and sit by the candlelight and remember the destruction of the temple? Is there such a different feeling in Israel that someone would...
Can you imagine if I said to you on Tisha B'Av morning, between 100 and 200,000 people came to the wall to pray? I mean, the number is staggering, just like the Holocaust. Like 6 million, we can't even fathom 6 million. If I say to you, hundreds of thousands of people come on Tisha B'Av to the Kotel to pray at night and all night. There's never a time when the Kotel is empty of worshipers. And in the morning, to see that, it's awesome. I mean, you can't even begin to realize Tisha B'Av, everything is closed also, like Yom HaShoah. It's an official memorial day. It's the official national day of mourning for the Jewish people and all the tragedies that have happened to our people. And it's interesting, like Napoleon, for example, in 1799, who became a Zionist, a non-Jewish Zionist who believed that the Jewish people should go back home. Nobody prays and fasts and laments and mourns for their cities that have been destroyed. The Christians and the Muslims don't mourn from Jerusalem. Today everyone wants Jerusalem to be an international city, but only the Jewish people still observe Tisha B'Av and really mean it and pray for and mourn the city that was destroyed, our capital that was destroyed 2,000 years ago. We've never forgotten it. We never left Jerusalem. We were expelled from Jerusalem, and we made a promise, V'shavu Vanim Livulam, that we would return. And God
even in the expulsion, Jews stayed there.
Yes, but we never stopped giving up hope. We never gave up hope that we would ever stay away. We would always come back to Jerusalem. And we are the only nation in the world that has ever mourned our city with intensity. And Tisha B'Av has become the ultimate experience of mourning for something that was ours, that we prayed to have again. And in our generation, we have it again. We don't have the temple yet. So Tisha B'Av, we hear every once in a while people say, maybe we should stop observing Tisha B'Av today. We have Israel, we have Jerusalem today, but until the temple is rebuilt, temple number 3, Tisha B'Av remains in force.
You know, it's interesting, and maybe you can expound on this a little bit while we're talking about this mourning for Jerusalem and Tisha B'Av. What about the non-religious? You think the temple is a sign of religiosity. The Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, where religious things took place. There are so many secular Jews people who don't identify with any religious except for their love for the land of Israel because they were born there and so on, a national
Look, I can't lie to you, and I won't lie to you and say everyone observes Tisha B'Av, everyone fasts. Obviously, it's not true. We have a significant number, an exceptionally large.
You say everything is closed. Is this the secular stores too? Does it become
everything? Tisha B'Av is closed. Tisha B'Av is a national day of mourning. But you'd be surprised how many secular Jews come to the wall on Tisha B'Av. I was there this last year from Mincha in the afternoon. Tens and tens of thousands of people, but as many people that were there to pray and who were fasting and who came to really experience the Tisha B'Av experience. I saw thousands of people, secular people, without kippot that were there just to experience the safety, to feel they were like a magnet. They were drawn to the wall. They may not understand fully, they may not comprehend the intensity of the fast in the morning, what we do on Tisha B'Av, but they felt compelled to be there to share in this national experience. Just like on Sukkot. There are people who build a sukkah who are not religious because it's a cultural thing to do. Jews build a sukkah. I once had a man who said to me, I asked him, he was eating without a head covering in the cafeteria of the Hadassah Hospital. I said, are you a religious Jew? He said to me, I'm really a secular Jew, but he puts on tefillin every day, and he keeps kosher, and he fasts on Yom Kippur, and he has a Seder on Pesach. I said, but I thought you said you were a secular Jew. He says, I am a secular Jew. I said, but I'm a Jew. A Jew shouldn't fast on Yom Kippur. A Jew shouldn't do this. A Jew shouldn't do that. So it's all a question of what you mean by religious and observant. And many secular Jews observe much more than you would imagine.
It's prevalent in the newspapers today, and I really don't want you to comment on a political level or even personal level, but just as more reporting to us the atmosphere is this question of who should control the religious laws in Israel, whether the courts have control, whether the rabbinate has control. Does this affect the Israeli citizen or the religious Jew in Israel?
See, everything affects us. In America, you have two parties, Republicans and Democrats, and the truth of the matter is whoever is in office, it doesn't make a heck of a big difference in your lifestyle. Life goes on. In Israel, it's a small country. There's tension between the religious and the irreligious, as you said. And whatever happens affects everyone deeply. If the religious parties are in control, if there's religious rules are enacted, it affects everyone. Marriage and burial and divorce, etc.
But they never
adoption and conversion.
They never impose religious law on people of citizens. They don't impose that. But just the public government things such as marriage and that are controlled by law, those are the things that are religious. Why do people make
such a big deal? Everyone gets married. I mean, everyone is married and everyone is involved in those kinds of things. You have to go to the rabbinate eventually when you get married. The children have to go, and sometimes it's a negative experience. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be, but sometimes it's resented by secular Jews that they have to go to people that they don't necessarily wish to go to. In America, for example, if you're not religious, you can go to a secular authority, like a judge, a justice of the peace. You can go to a totally secular rabbi, a humanistic rabbi, someone who is not involved in the ritual. In Israel, you can't do that. You have to go to the rabbinate, and the only rabbinate that's recognized in Israel is the Orthodox rabbinate. I mean, we won't get into that, whether that's good or bad, whether there should be pluralism. That's another subject that we'll talk about at another time.
That would be good for another visit. But tell me this, do you think that'll change? Or do you think, in your opinion...
I personally think it will change. I'm not sure it's going to change in the next days and weeks and months in my lifetime, but I see the inevitable change. The truth of the matter is that if the conservative Jews of America en masse, 100, 200, 300,000 would come to Israel, or Reform Jews, 100, 200, 300,000 would come en masse, there would be a tremendous change in the country because they would demand it, and the government would have to address their demands. But from the outside saying it should be this way, it's not going to change.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I want to wish you much success with your book, Off the Wall by Rabbi Jay Karzen, and I hope that next time you're in Chicago, you'll come visit us again.
It's nice to be here.
I'm sure that if anybody is in Israel, that you're more than open to visit with them when they're there.
Absolutely.
And again, I want to say shalom, and thanks for being on the show, and thank you for being with us here on Taped with Rabbi Doug.
All the best. The Hitro.